I do think of myself as someone who's risk averse, but what bothers me more is the regret of never trying. So my feeling of regretting not trying something outweighs my fear of risk. Don't get so stuck in the day-to-day that you're not paying attention to the little things. Like sometimes the little things are the things that, remember, most people are just living their day-to-day. They're too busy or they don't care. They're not paying attention. If you pay attention and you understand the little things start magically connecting the dots inside your brain, and those connecting of the dots could be the business idea that you need to really get going.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Friday Habit, and today you're in for a treat. We're in studio, which is always fun, and today we got Henry Yoshida on. He's the CEO and co-founder of Rocket Dollar. Before building Rocket Dollar, Henry spent years in finance and startups, and along the way developed a clear point of view on risk, ownership, and what it really takes to grow a durable business. So, Henry, welcome to the Friday Habit.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So, listen, on this show, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of agency owners, people who are grinding and like starting businesses or trying to figure out, how to start a business. And so I kind of want to pull from you a little bit of your experience on, taking that leap, like making that decision to build something, especially in an industry where I feel like, finance, there's so much regulation and there's so many hurdles and probably red tape to overcome. So I'll be curious about that. Before we get into that, though, I got some questions, some warm-up questions for you. So hopefully you'll be able to answer these. All right. So what's a job or role you had early on that secretly prepared you for being a founder, even though it didn't feel like it at the time?
So when I was in the corporate world, I went to work for a big company, Merrill Lynch, which is now part of Bank of America. And the weird thing is that you actually run your own business within Merrill. You're actually competing with people down the hall from you. And in a way, it was really great for me because I worked for a big company and I had some of the accoutrements of a big company, benefits. I didn't have to worry about, fixing my computer or setting it up. But at the same time, we had to compete with the people down the hall from us. So I think it was a great way for me to spend 10 years in a corporate environment where you still had to be entrepreneurial. So that was an entry-level job. And you had to be a killer. And so much so that every year they would rank us by the revenue that we produced the year before, and the manager would have the floor plan. And by highest revenue, you pick your either cube or offage. Yeah.
So it's like
once a year in January.
The guy who sucks is way in the back, and everyone knows as they're going to the bathroom like this guy.
Well, and as the years go on, if you're one of the younger guys and you start moving up the ranks and you take an office from someone who's been in that office, like let's say an old timer has been at the company for 20 years, well, now this person probably quite literally wants to kill you.
That is a savage environment.
Yeah.
What about a decision? This one I relate to. What's a decision you stressed over for weeks that in hindsight barely mattered at all?
For me, I think that I spent a lot of time thinking about maybe where to go to college.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I was thinking about where to go. You'd applied to all these places, you get accepted, and you think about going. And the reason why it didn't matter was because, unbeknownst to my younger brother and I, he's pretty close in age, my parents had already decided the only school you can go to is the state university because you guys are so close. We can't afford to send one of you to any private school that's not partially covered because you're in state. So you're going to the University of Texas.
So all that stress for nothing.
Yeah. It also made sense why we never really got to do any of those college visits that I'd heard so much about.
Everyone's like, I'm going on a tour this weekend. You're like, tour? What?
Yeah.
What did your parents do? Give us a little bit of background of kind of where you came from. You're an Asian guy from Texas, which, is unique.
Right.
I'm sure in your town you were the minority of.
Well, I'm Japanese American, so that part was the minority. There were not a lot of Japanese Americans in Texas. Maybe in California, different places in the country that'd be different. But my background, my parents ended up in Texas by the time my brother and I were born. They came to America separately. They met in California and kind of moved around. They didn't come here for college. They just kind of came here to experience American culture and
Land
life.
of the free, right? American dream.
Well, especially in my mother's case, she actually got here the week of Roe versus Wade, and the first thing she did, she'd heard about this place called McDonald's and heard about their hamburgers. Went to go get one, was disappointed because it's the plain hamburger that that comes in the Happy Meal. Right, it sucks, but at least it was 40 cents back then.
That's true.
They ended up in Dallas and working in the restaurant industry. So my brother and I actually kind of grew up. After school, we'd get picked up, and because my parents worked in the restaurant industry, we would actually get dropped off at the restaurant. So we would be there finishing when they were finishing that lunch shift. Then we would drive home with them. So I did a lot of my homework in the bar area of a Japanese restaurant in Dallas. And in my mom's case, it was Benihana's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the well-known place.
Yeah,
Benihana's I did a lot of homework and a lot of hanging out.
Were they tossing you free shrimps all the time?
No, it was the in-between. So,
okay.
It was that time where nothing was going on in the restaurant, and it was just kind of a sad place to be, actually.
You're like, thanks for bringing it up.
Right.
Now I'm sad. So obviously you come from a family of hardworking, individuals and people who, like instilled like a work ethic in you. At what point did you kind of think that you wanted to maybe do your own thing or you go to college, state school and stuff like that. You get into the system, right? Like kind of your example earlier on, you went to Merrill Lynch and you kind of started rising through the ranks, hopefully getting a better office every year. And then at what point were you like, you know what, I kind of want to do my own thing?
I didn't set out on that path. I mean, since my parents worked in that restaurant industry, I actually had a different upbringing. My thought process was, and throughout my life, I've met a lot of people, other people now that I'm an entrepreneur, that they became entrepreneurs because their parents had the very stable job. Like, let's say one might have been a school teacher, and the other one was an accountant. Like, very stable job, stable salary. You go the 9 to 5, you commute there, finish work, and come back home. It's Monday through Friday, and then their offspring, my friends, became entrepreneurs because they saw that their parents just did the same thing, although it was steady. The grind, but it was good financially and stable. And my parents worked in this environment where if the restaurant wasn't doing well and they had to work at nights, like if you think about it, if you're the child, and a lot of Asian American kids can relate to this that are my age. So their parents came here, get into the restaurant industry. Well, if you work in the restaurant industry, they're always working on the times when most people celebrate holidays. So they're never around on holidays. So you didn't do that. You were kind of at home by yourself, a latchkey kid. And what that instilled in me was actually the opposite, which was I wanted to go work at the big company, have the stable, safe job.
Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Right, because they didn't have that because they had a lunch shift, and if no one came in, there were no tips as a server or as a chef in my father's case. So I actually sought out that stability. So for me, going into that entrepreneurial route was not something that I'd ever planned. It's just that something that I decided to take a leap and do, thinking that if I failed, I could just go back anyway. I mean,
get a regular job. Yeah,
I could go back and get another regular job, but I just wanted to take a chance and try, and that was 3 companies ago.
Wow. So, okay. Yeah. So walk us through that. What was your first company?
So at Merrill Lynch, I got into a field where I was consulting on tax advantage retirement accounts. I became an expert 401ks, IRAs, and that became what I was known for within my business. We could build our business the way we wanted. So people might specialize in working with business owners and bond portfolios. My specialization was small and mid-sized companies, 401k consulting. That's what I did. And when I left in 2010, I created a management consulting business to do that same thing. So basically, I just lifted and shifted the business that I did at Merrill, did it independently.
Yeah, instead of working to build someone else's thing, you're like, I'll work to build my own thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that ended up getting acquired. So that was a business that started and sold, but it wasn't much of a leap from what I was doing from the corporate space. It wasn't as if I just did something completely new.
Yeah, so that buy and sell process, were you looking to be sold? Or, like when you started it? Were you thinking like, all right, I'm going to build this up and sell it? Or were you just going by your business and someone said, hey, we got some private equity and we need to...
A little bit different. It was, I had a partner in that business. So we were partners at Merrill, and we just had different goals for the business. I wanted to expand it. He didn't. He had a different upbringing. So his father had amassed a pretty good like mini empire. So basically was in a business LLC that actually owned a lot of Wendy's franchises up and down the interstate highway between Dallas, Texas, and Austin, Texas. So, at some point, he's probably going to inherit this business. So there was no need to try to take risks and grow the one that we had together.
Right.
And I wanted to go and, build it bigger. And so just understand that we were 50-50. One of us had to go. So there's actually a business term. It's kind of called like a shotgun breakup where,
like a shotgun wedding, but
essentially, but on the breakup side that you have to decide, you break up. So whoever loses, kind of leaves that business.
Yeah.
And so I was the one that decided to leave that business. So it wasn't forced. The business ended up getting acquired, but it's because we couldn't continue that business because we had different visions for it. I wanted to expand it. He wanted it just to be sort of a business to hold himself over until he inherits this family business.
And so then when starting your next venture, was it in the same field or same kind of space?
Completely different.
Okay. And then did you have any hesitations or concerns about having a partner?
Well, at that point, it was in the same space. I guess I should say it was in the same industry. So it was still financial services, but it was in technology. It was related to the field that I'd become an expert in, so 401k consulting. I'd done really well in that space. And then I had the consulting business. That business ultimately sold. And now I sought out to create a platform. And I teamed up with another person. So this time a technical co-founder, because it was a technology company. I was the business and sort of operations and knowledge side of it. This person was the technical side. So this one was different. We raised venture capital money. Weren't sure if it was going to work. And we actually didn't really seek out venture capital money. It kind of came to us accidentally. We met investors from Silicon Valley during South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. Very cliched, at a bar.
It's like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I'm a VC. It's like, oh, really? I have a business.
We had an idea, and they ended up giving us money. So did another partnership then, and we got the product launched, but we got all the venture capital money just to get that product built, and then didn't have enough to basically go take it to market, go get customers, and try to grow the revenue, which is what you kind of need to get to that next stage of funding. A venture-backed business, I'll take a quick aside here, is very similar to when we were kids and we played those racing video games. So you got the clock ticking down. You got to get to the checkpoint. When you get to the checkpoint, well, Excite Bike's different. You get to the end, but I was thinking more like Outrun. So if you remember Outrun with the red car, the red convertible Ferrari, that you start the race, and the better you do in that first segment, and when you hit the checkpoint, if you can get to the checkpoint and you still have 18 seconds left, well, now you're going to get a new minute. So now I got a minute 18. But if you get to that checkpoint right down to the wire and you have 1 second, now you only have 1 minute and 1 second. So you're behind the 8 ball. So venture investing and going through rounds of funding is similar to that, where the more momentum you have to hit a certain milestone and you get funding for the next phase of the business, the more likely you are to hit it. You're not behind the 8 ball. You actually have an 18-second cushion. And we struggled through that first part, but the product was built. So to get that new round of funding, it was going to be difficult to then get the customer traction and the revenue that we needed to then hit that next checkpoint. So we made a decision that we needed to explore selling that particular company. So you spread the word. We were lucky enough that someone wanted to acquire the assets of that business. And it was a big, well-known firm who wanted to acquire it just to help them get into a new consumer space and compete against, at the time, the Robin Hoods were starting to get created. So we ended up exiting that business. So I always joke around that I failed into an acquisition in that particular one.
But it seems like everything you do turns to gold, It's like you leave school and then you're just like business, sell the business, next business, sell the business.
I don't know if I'd frame it that way.
Like the Midas touch.
I frame it a different way, which is, you got lemons, you need to make it into lemonade. So I don't know if it's like everything I touch turns to gold. And the way living through it, it seems much more like... hey, what are you going to do with this lemon? You got to make some lemonade. There's nothing else to do. You just kind of, this is the hand that you've been dealt.
You're like, who's got the sugar?
You have to deal with this. And it was lemonade with no sugar. So,
Yeah. So then I'm assuming then from there, you're like, all right, you get this taste of building a business, you doing a SaaS product or some sort of, digital product. You're like, all right, I think I could do this again. But now I learned that I got to get that 18 seconds on the clock.
Well, you got to get the momentum out of the gate. And one of the things you learn, so just going back to the actual business, so that particular business was a consumer fintech product, so a digital financial advisor product. But we targeted a customer segment which they use the term not a high-value customer segment. So in other words, the cost of acquisition of one customer exceeded the value of that customer's lifetime value to us as a business. So it's kind of a death spiral, right? I mean, you really can't spend $1.50 to go make $1,
right?
Because the more $1.50s you spend, the more you're going to get in the hole if you're losing.
Yeah, but
50
isn't that what
cents.
Jeff Bezos did, right? I mean, wasn't Amazon the whole like thing? Was it's like over time, I'll get to that spot.
Well, that's true, but now I think people look at Amazon as it was inevitably going to be successful. But there's a lot of financial books that you could read from the early 2000s, and analysts on Wall Street who are still, you can look these up on YouTube. They bet against Amazon. They thought it was going to go bankrupt, and they thought the big winner was going to be eBay. And the reason why was that eBay didn't have to pay or hold any of their inventory.
Right.
So that learning in our case led me to starting Rocket Dollar, my current business, by creating a product in the same space that I knew. So another way that I describe myself is that when you work in a particular industry and you specialize in a particular part of that industry, sometimes it's pretty good to be someone who's a mile deep and an inch wide. You become a specialist. As a matter of fact, that a lot of industries are that way. Right. Medical professions that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want your heart surgeon to be a general practitioner.
Yeah, the jack of all trades.
Exactly. A lawyer, same thing. If you have a very specific legal need, you don't want someone who knows law broadly. You want someone who knows that particular area because that's what you need their expertise to lie in.
There's riches in the niches.
So that's a great way of putting it. So I was one of these a mile deep and an inch wide people out there who knew a lot about the 401k and IRA space. So creating Rocket Dollar, putting this together was thinking that what's a way that I can stay within my swim lane, but develop a product that went after a better, higher value customer segment. So that's what led me to the product that we have today.
Yeah.
That was 7 years ago now.
Yeah. And again, did you, thinking back on the other businesses, did you think, let me find a partner and let me find some VC money? Or did the partner come from the company?
Well, I think at this point, the Rocket Dollar one, I did set it up to where I was more of the primary person. Decided that it was difficult because I didn't want the same problem to happen where your visions weren't aligned.
Right.
In the second.
Well, and that's one of the biggest things you hear, right? People say, it's funny because I come across so many people that say, oh yeah, it's all about who you surround yourself with, get the right partners. And then I hear other people saying like, don't get partners, do it yourself. Like don't allow anyone else to make decisions. You got to follow your gut and not let anyone else get in the way. And it seems like like what advice would you give on that?
Yeah, well, some of them, work. So, you think about some of the eponymous great tech companies. I mean,
Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak.
They were together. They were a duo. Bill Gates didn't do it himself.
Yeah, Steve Ballmer.
Yeah. But then you see some where they basically did it themselves. Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Elon Musk, Tesla, and SpaceX and so forth. These are like singular folks.
Right.
So I think that it's situation dependent. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. You need to make that decision for yourself. In my case, I'd done businesses in the past with other partners. This one, I decided to set myself up as the primary person. So at least if I fail, I can't just sit there and try to displace the blame on someone else.
Right. Yeah.
It'd just be on me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, when I, started, my marketing agency, I had come from a musical background, and I was in a band, with 4 other guys, and I saw the dynamic of making decisions. You have to bring everybody in, and it's kind of like Survivor, where you're trying to get people on your ideas. We're going to vote somebody off, and we got to get everybody in. Who's the alliance going to be? And so I think when it came to launching Brand Viva, and we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, I wanted to be able to make gut decisions and not have to explain myself or justify anything, just to say, listen, maybe this doesn't make sense on paper, but I just feel like this is what I have to do. And, it worked out for me.
Well, and at this point, I felt like I kind of knew that, hey, this is the direction. So if it works, at least it was my decision. If it doesn't work, it was also my decision and my blame to take. So I really thought about that. And this was the 3rd business in the space. I'd been in the same part of financial services for many, many years. I like the idea of creating a product because it was a lot more scalable than selling my time, which is what the consulting part of the business was. And I knew that there was an underserved customer segment in the product that I was building at that time because I'd had a couple of years to think about it after the exit of the last business, to understand that landscape.
Yeah. What when you go back to kind of the earlier days, and you're personally trying to solve, Rocket Dollar's market or the problem that you're trying to solve with the company. What was it about it specifically? And maybe even you can tell us, like, okay, what exactly Rocket Dollar does. From what I gather, it's essentially a place where we can use our 401k or retirement to invest in other things than just stocks and bonds.
Yeah, well, it's because the IRAs, the 401ks that exist for the large majority of Americans, they're at a provider who doesn't let the customer purchase anything other than stocks and bonds. But what's unknown is that since the creation of 401ks and IRAs in 1974, so 50, 51, 52 some odd years ago, it's never been disallowed to invest in private and alternative investments. So that could be everything from real estate to crypto. It's never been disallowed, but the companies that provide these accounts
that's
don't
interesting.
let you invest in
Yeah, it's almost like what they don't want you to know, because when you think about these really big companies, right, like BlackRock and things like that, they're buying investment portfolios and they're doing all this other types of stuff.
Well, and there is a reason that a lot of the same companies who provide the large majority of the IRAs and 401ks in the United States, on the one side of the house, they have individual retail investor customers, and they provide these people these accounts. So Charles Schwab, your Fidelity, Empower, and so forth. But on the other side of their house, they actually create financial products that are made up of these. So think mutual funds or insurance products with investments inside. So if they allowed the customers on the other side of the house with their IRA to go purchase a single-family home as a rental investment property or crypto, well, that's cannibalizing business that could be on the other side of that house. So they've disallowed it. So that sort of disallowing of flexibility of the investments has got a lot of people in America thinking that, well, maybe it's just not allowed. Maybe you can only invest in stocks, bonds, or mutual funds using your IRA. But the reality is that the IRS code had been established in 1974 that you could have always owned a single family home. So there are providers. I'm not the first one. But what I really wanted to do with Rocket Dollar was create a brand and a company that was easy and known, and a little bit more facing to the public. So I'd come from a consumer finance, consumer fintech background. So I was thinking that I need to make it as easy to open an account that's an IRA that allows someone to purchase a home or crypto as it is to open an IRA at some of those big Wall Street brokerage houses I just named, to then go buy one share of Tesla, for example, because people know how to do it. They could do it on their phone. They could do it over their lunch break, and so forth. So it was kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the retail customer. That what's the expectation today? I mean, there's a reason why the curation feeds for all of our streaming platforms look very similar. There's a reason why the interface on all the mobile apps on our phone look pretty similar. It's because people are used to that. If you try to change it up too much, then you're just going to lose everyone.
Yeah. So as a founder, so you said you've been going for 7 years now with Rocket Dollar, right? How has your success kind of ebbed and flowed over the past years? I mean, I think we've had some different things. COVID, hit and kind of put a kink in a lot of people's schedules and businesses and things like that. Like, how have you kind of approached the business, and what have been some of the hurdles you've had to get over? Obviously, it seems like almost like an educational hurdle of trying to tell people, like, hey, like, you have access to these things. You can use your money in this way. And so it's like an educational hurdle. What are some other types of things that you've had to overcome?
Well, that's a big one. I mean, sometimes there's a lot of great ideas that are just before their time, right? We sit here now with iPhones in our pockets and iPads, but at the end of the day, there were companies in the early 90s
the Palm Pilot, bro.
Palm Pilot, the Newton,
the Newton.
Before their time.
Yeah, even the electric car. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize there was like electric cars in the 90s, but it was just like they were just too ahead of their time.
Well, and Google is barely in the first 100 search engines that have ever existed. Facebook is barely in the first 50 social media networks that ever existed. So the ones before them were before their time. Couchsurfing.com existed for a decade before Airbnb was ever started, for example. So it was just before their time. So, when I started that business, it was a matter of, is the general retail investing public going to understand that it's the right time to invest in private deals using some of these IRA and 401k monies? And I didn't control the investments that were available. So some of these are private. They're hard to find, or they have very high minimums for people to invest in, or you had to attest to meet certain net worth and income requirements to invest in those. So I had no control over these. So starting that business was going into that part of it a little bit blind, that what if no one in America is interested or allowed to invest in these private investments? Right. And I'm one of the forgotten search engines right. before the Google.
Yeah.
That was always a fear of mine. So that was a big one. And then the others were just that we had the struggles of any small business where, there's multiple times in an entrepreneur's journey where you're asking your bookkeeper that, hey, if I were to adjust my salary down, what's the minimum I need to take to still be eligible for benefits in the company? And I remember having that conversation with my bookkeeper a lot more than what's an extra amount that I could take as in terms of salary.
Right.
And I've done that probably enough times to count on one hand, but less than two. Over the course of the business.
And so what was that you felt kind of where you shifted from being a scrappy startup to feeling like, because how big is Rocket Dollar now?
So we're part of a larger organization. So we're attached to a company called Retired.com. So we operate at RocketDollar.com and Retired.com. Overall, we have about $12 billion of customer assets, mid 8-figure number of customers across the United States, since IRAs are U.S.-only account.
Right.
And we're just getting started. That $12 billion, by the way, is amongst retirement accounts in the U.S. are currently at $46.8 trillion.
Wow.
So that number may sound big, but there's a lot of market space ready to grow. Yeah.
And so really it's just like trying to get the word out, educate people. And in my mind, I feel like more than ever, people are ready to like find something new, like figure out how to compete at a higher level. Like, so many things seem out of reach, especially for millennials or Gen Z, even home buying or something like that, right? It's like, and so how can you do some of those things? And it might be through a vehicle like Rocket Dollar.
It might be. At the end of the day, people have accumulated large amounts of money. I mean, this is where, outside of, let's say, equity in their primary residence, this is probably where people have the most equity in their life on average, if you're an American. It's because you've worked at a few jobs. A couple of them had 401ks that you participated in. And then as you've moved from job to job, you've consolidated to an IRA. And now you have a mid 8-figure amount and you're in your early 30s. Or you could have a low 6-figure amount and you're in your early 40s. And there's some people, tens of thousands now, who have over $1 million in these accounts. But they're with a provider who tells them that they can only invest in things that are offered by BlackRock or representing the top 500 largest publicly traded companies in the U.S. And when you look at a platform like ours, you realize that you can unlock that money that's already yours, keep the same tax treatment, same tax structure, same account structure, and invest in something that you might have more personal knowledge about, which is, let's say, a rental property on the other side of town from where you live. I mean, I would argue that that's more tangible. You might be more personally knowledgeable than the inner machinations of how NVIDIA makes their money.
Right. Yeah. When you first started Rocket, did you decide to go venture or bootstrap? Like, what were some of your decisions there? And then I guess my other question would be is, how did you start hiring people and bringing people on board to help you grow and whatnot? So
we did start, in this case, venture out of the gate. We did a seed round, and then we did a Series A. Those are the only 2 rounds we've ever done. So seed round was $5 million. A round was $8 million in 21. We actually, that was during COVID, and consumer fintech was hot. So we had the opportunity to take a lot more.
Yeah.
But ultimately, based on experiences in past businesses, I decided that in addition to not having dominant and equal partners within that business, I also didn't want to give up control of that business. So chose the smaller amount, which allowed me to retain the control, which put us in a position to do this relationship that we have with Retired.com, our parent company.
Yeah.
And hiring people out of the gate, at first it's just inspiring them, because these are people that if you're trying to get your team together and they're worthwhile folks who are sought after by other companies who could provide a lot more,
right.
You're really having to reach out and touch these people individually and get them to understand a vision that might go beyond what you could offer them financially or comfort-wise in a job, because you're a non-proven early stage business with no track record. So they're really taking a leap of faith to join you.
Right. Especially as a tech company,
Exactly.
There's a lot of competition out there from everybody. It's like OpenAI needs 1,000 new engineers, or whatever it is.
Right.
And
I live in Austin, Texas, so there are a
Right.
lot of tech companies competing for engineering talent, product talent. But I'm proud that a lot of the early employees that I had are still with me today in the business and still working with me, because I know that they have opportunities to go other places, but they choose not to. They like where they are. So I'm proud of that we've been able to retain and grow with the kind of a very similar core team to where we started.
What's up with the name Rocket Dollar? Because I always think of Rocket Mortgage, because they got a big brand, that's out there.
Well, so Rocket Mortgage used to be called Quicken Loans.
Right.
And then they created that brand. It was 2016 was when they started Rocket Mortgage. I started Rocket Dollar in 2018. So I did buy the domain. I protected it through service marks, and I knew that would happen. But my prior business was called Honest Dollar. So really the coming up of Rocket Dollar was a circumstance where I had been more known for having the name or the word dollar in a company that I'd started. And Rocket Dollar itself was an available domain for $420 in 2018.
Nice.
The Honest Dollar domain was available for $625 in 2014. And then secondarily, when I look at what at that time it would compete against. So this is a shout out to a school I've never been to, but when I looked up the term Rocket Dollar, the only thing that came up on Google at that time that would possibly compete if I were to start a business around that domain name was the campus money at the University of Toledo in Ohio. Their mascot is the Rockets, and the little debit cards that the parents can load money onto so they could,
Rocket
get
dollars.
stuff. Yeah, they were Rocket Dollars, and I thought I could blow them off this page. Back then, Google did page 1, page 2. Now it does a continuous feed.
Yeah.
But at that time, I thought I could blow them off that page in a week.
Yeah.
And I can afford this domain, so hence that became the name of the company.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about, to me it sounds like something that you're not afraid of is risk, because from each venture, it seems like there's risk in everything you do. And again, you come from a background where you're like, all right, I want a solid, stable job Monday through Friday, whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like risk after risk. Where does that come from? And how do you encourage somebody? Because I feel like the issue that most people have is taking risks. They're afraid to make that leap, take that jump. And so how do you encourage somebody around that stomach for risk?
Well, I don't know if that's a good characterization of me. I think I do. I'm like anyone else. It's human nature.
Yeah.
I do think of myself as someone who's risk averse. But what bothers me more is the regret of never trying. So my feeling of regretting not trying something outweighs my fear of risk. And then the regret of not trying, it's having enough confidence in yourself to say that if it doesn't work out, could you always go back and find something stable? And, when you grow up and your parents worked in the restaurant industry, there was no keeping up with the Joneses for my parents. It didn't matter. Like, I guess the one thing that I sort of understood was I didn't really care what other people thought. And when you can get past that particular hurdle, and then when you understand that the pain of a regret and not trying something would outweigh your fear of risk, then you have a pretty good formula to go try, because you understand that if it doesn't work out, you could always go back to the baseline, right? But you'll never know if something will work unless you try it.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love that. And that's something that I'm always trying to encourage people to. When I started Brand Viva, I was the director of creative media for this real estate tech startup, and they had some huge funding not come in, and they laid off half the company the first week of January of 2016. And so I had that same thought. I had Brand Viva as like a side hustle, nights and weekends. And I was like, all right, I could go all in on my side hustle or go get another director job somewhere. But if I never go in all on my side hustle, I'll never know if I can actually make it into something.
And sometimes, a lot of times people's side hustle, people always think that, your side hustle must have become so successful that you gave up your regular, and be like, no, my regular went away, eviscerated.
Thankfully, I had a side hustle to jump into.
My side hustle, as nasty as it was, kind of became my primary hustle.
Yeah, exactly. So if you had to give some advice, to someone who's out there who's thinking about starting a business or taking that risk or that leap, what's one thing of advice that you would give them? I always like to leave people. The show's called The Friday Habit. I always like to leave people with some sort of advice to say, hey, Monday morning, start doing X, Y, and Z. Start doing this.
Right.
What advice do you think you'd give?
I would say it's be curious and be open to listening. There's a lot of people who say that they're listening, but if you really keep your eyes and ears open and you're trying to mentally connect dots, you might find opportunities to create businesses that no one else saw before. Or even if someone else did, they just aren't doing it the right way, or you can improve on that. And I just tell people that don't get so stuck in the day-to-day that you're not paying attention to the little things. Like sometimes the little things are the things that, remember, most people are just living their day-to-day. They're too busy or they don't care. They're not paying attention. If you pay attention and you understand the little things start magically connecting the dots inside your brain. And those connecting of the dots could be the business idea that you need to really get going.
Yeah.
And turn something small into your primary hustle into something big.
Yeah.
As a company.
Yeah.
So I'd say stay curious and listen. Be open-minded.
Yeah. And then what about any types of pitfalls or things that you look back on that you would say, I would do this differently, or I would think about this before moving forward?
Well, for me, I would probably say that I maybe stepped a little bit too all in for the business. I mean, although it was all consuming, and when you're an entrepreneur, it becomes that way. But sometimes it's at the risk of maybe your close relationships, so family and friends. And I think looking back, I thought to myself that I had to be 110% focused on this particular business or it won't work. But looking back, I think to myself that more balance might have actually served me better, because it would have put you in a better headspace to understand how to separate one part of your life from another, as opposed to like going all in on the one part of your life at the expense of the others. And when those other ones start to strain, now that affects the part that you were focused on. So I'd probably say that although it's weird advice, like I might say to take the foot off of the gas.
Yeah. Don't get so all consumed. I think that's very valid, because again, you hear the story time and time again, right? Broken relationships, the kids that are like, I just wanted my dad home. And he's like, yeah, but I was working for you. And they're like, yeah, we don't care about all this stuff. We just wanted you.
Right. Yeah. No, that's definitely true. So, that balance, I think, creates better situations inside of your life, and when you go too all in on one side, things will fall apart on the other. So I'm not telling people to get distracted or spread their attention. It's just that there's more than one important thing in your life, and they may not be completely exactly related to each other. But if one gets out of sync because of neglect, it's going to affect the one that you were focusing on, and now both of them are going to not do well.
Yeah, yeah. What are some habits or things that you do within your day-to-day life that you try to like stay on top of, just to stay in that right mindset and be healthy?
I separate a lot now, but I do create time for myself. So I have a term for myself, and I'm not the one who invented this, but I think of my life in two segments. So a 5 to 9 or 3, 5 to 9, a 9 to 5, and a 5 to 9 again. So that 5 to 9 a.m., I'm an early riser. That's kind of my time. Like that's when I do my stuff. The 9 to 5 is obviously my work life. And then the 5 to 9 is the time I try to spend now with family. Yeah. And I didn't have a good segmentation of all three. I probably spent like 95% in the business one at the neglect of my own time and at the neglect of family time.
Okay.
And now I would really say to create these true distinctions to yourself. And in my case, I'm a numbers person, so I like to divide it by time. Someone else might divide it by activities or situations and just changing the environment. But that's one of the things that I do. So I have 3 distinct periods of time that together create the balance in my life that I think will serve me better at this point going forward.
Yeah, I love that. 5 to 9, 9 to 5, 5 to 9.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, hey, if people wanted to connect with you or stay in touch, find more about Rocket Dollar, where's the best place?
Well, so there's a lot of information at rocketdollar.com. So that's where people obviously can learn about our types of IRA accounts, private and alternative investments, tax advantage retirement accounts. They can sign up. They manage the accounts. Everything.
Do you have like small business? Like as a small business, can I offer things to my employees or anything like that? Like, do you have any product like that?
So we don't, because that's another thing that I went away from, because what I find is that IRAs, they stand for individuals. So I went a little bit downstream. I started my career working with 401ks. Those are offered by businesses, but people go from job to job. So I wanted to stick with the individual and go away from the company, because people leave the companies. And I always tell people that you usually have 1, maybe 2 current jobs. But if you're over the age of 35 now in modern America, you might have
bouncing.
8 former jobs.
Whenever I go to research somebody who's interviewing for a job, I'm like scrolling for days.
Exactly. Like if you have to hit the expand button on their LinkedIn profile, that wasn't so normal back then. It's very normal today. And then for me personally, pretty easy to find. So I have a personal handle, Fit Finance Henry, on Instagram, but a lot of information at rocketdollar.com related to the business.
Cool. Awesome. Henry, thanks for hanging out with me and sharing your story. And there's definitely some great nuggets of encouragement and things that I think our audience is going to take away and be able to apply to their own businesses and lives. So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the Friday Habit. Until next time, remember, live every day like it's Friday.